everyone, we are back for another video, and obviously as you can see this is a different type of video than we normally make on this channel. I'm Cari. This channel generally is about Hawaii food and family. It's my husband Reid, and today we're actually going to be having a sit-down conversation and going to be sharing some exciting news with all of you, and also sharing a little bit of our story and a little bit more of who we are and what, I guess, some of the things that we've been going through.
This is more of a life update video, I think, than what we normally do on this channel, which is more about cooking and featuring our family members. It's still family, but it's our family. So we're here to give you a special announcement, so stay tuned to the end for that. But let's tell a little bit about what's been going on in our life.
So we got married in 2018 and we had a beautiful wedding, and it was just a really nice ceremony and reception, and some of you may have seen our wedding video. It's up on my channel, so if not, I'll link that in the description and in the cards as well, but you can check that out. And since then, you know, we've been trying to start our own family, and you know, obviously if you've been on my channel, you see how much we enjoy kids. We have a lot of nieces and nephews, and for us it's just been something that we both have been valuing and that we both have wanted in our lives for a long time.
So we started that journey in 2019 and started to try to have kids. And it was month after month of trying and trying and trying. And we went I think about 8 months at that time. And because we're a little older, our doctor, we actually share the same doctor, suggested that, you know, after 6 months of not trying, after 6 months of trying, if you want, you can go and see a fertility doctor. And sometimes, you know, they can help facilitate getting pregnant. And so we started that journey and decided to do that at the end of 2019. But then we all know what happened.
The pandemic.
Dun dun dun. And so right around the time that we had scheduled our first appointment with the fertility doctor, the pandemic hit in March of 2020, and everything got shut down here in Hawaii. And so unfortunately that delayed our first meeting with our doctor. So what ended up happening was we had to push back our appointment to May of 2020. So there was a little bit of a delay in us seeing our fertility doctor, but we kept trying nonetheless.
Yeah, so I think our first appointment was like a virtual appointment just because of COVID, and at that time everybody was like scared, and you know, like elective procedures and all of that were shutting down, and so it was just kind of a sensitive time. And you know, even for us, I think we were just feeling like, oh my gosh, maybe we can't do this right now because of everything that's going on in the world. But luckily, you know, we were able to still make an appointment and see her virtually, and from that virtual appointment we got to then, I guess, you know, she talked to us, and then eventually we had like an in-person appointment where I think I did an ultrasound at that time, and you know, she checked me out and she's like, yeah, it should be, you know, you're healthy, you should be fine. Maybe you have PCOS, right? Other than that, so maybe watch your diet and don't eat too many sugary foods and starch and all of that kind of stuff. So I kind of started to go on like a diet thing as well, or you know, just kind of watch what I've been eating as well. But the plan in the beginning was just for me to do the IUI, and IUI is intrauterine insemination, which is like they basically inject the semen into the female's body at the right time of ovulation. And so we did, I think, 5 of those, and actually all of them failed.
And that was an experience in itself, because having these appointments and procedures done during the pandemic, we weren't able to, I guess, have normal doctor visits. You know, as the husband in all this, and I wasn't technically the patient, I wasn't allowed to be there during any of the transfers. So Cari oftentimes had to go to these appointments alone. So for me, it was kind of like depositing at a bank. You just show up with your product and you drop it off, and hopefully it gets to the right place. But like Cari said, we did 5 of these, and all 5 were unsuccessful, which is a little disheartening, I think. And being that we were in the middle of a lockdown, we really only had each other to rely on during that whole time. After
we did the 5 IUIs, and I think at that time we thought we would already be pregnant. I think a lot of people that go through fertility journeys, you know, they don't know how long, or they just don't think it's going to take as long as it takes, I think. And so that was definitely us. So with 5 IUIs, that's like 5 months of this process so far, you know. And so the next step when IUIs don't work, then you can go into IVF. And so for me and my insurance, I had to do at least 3 unsuccessful IUIs before I could be considered to get insured for IVF. And IVF is a very expensive procedure, so it's really good to get insured if that's something that you need to do. So IVF is in vitro fertilization, and that is basically when they fertilize the sperm and the egg outside of the body, and then they put that fertilized embryo back into the woman's body at either like right after or at a later time. So it's a little bit different because the woman has to then take out her eggs, and that's a process in itself.
To take a step back, it's a very emotional time, right? And even during the IUI process, there was one almost successful try where we had a chemical pregnancy, it didn't ended up taking. And so if you can imagine, there's a lot of highs and lows, and I think for Cari and I, we both started off very positive around this, but slowly started to see it maybe creeped out in our heads, like, I don't know if this is really the right time. I don't know if maybe we're really meant for this, because it does become emotionally draining. And like Cari said, starting in vitro in the IVF process, that in itself is another thing where your wife or your partner has to go through a lot of changes, right? Emotionally and hormonally and mentally, because she has to be on a lot of drugs to regulate things like her cycle, to regulate her hormone levels, just to make sure that, if you can imagine, think of it like a garden, right? We are making sure that the soil is the most ideal quality soil possible,
like
so that when we plant the embryo, right, it's going to assure itself of growing. And that's, I think, the most risky part about this whole thing, is really what the woman has to go through physically to make sure that she is in her optimal state for this thing to work.
There was so many shots that I had to take, in my belly, and it was a very, I guess, unique process, and if you've been through IVF, you totally understand, I think, what that means. And if you're gonna go through it, just know that you just always have to remember why you're doing something like this, because there is positive outcome, hopefully on the other side. So I think that's one thing that we always had to remember, I think, going through this. So we did the egg retrieval at the end of 2020, and it was pretty, I just remember for my body, like, it was pretty invasive in a sense, like the recovery process, because you go under anesthesia and all of that, they take it out, you don't really feel anything then, but I think after, you just feel like super bloated, and you feel super
it's tiring,
and like I just remember, like, I had the worst period of my life at that time, like ever in my whole life, I think, right after that procedure. And so I decided to do like the frozen embryo transfer, meaning that, so after they took out my eggs and then they fertilized them with Reid sperm, then they're gonna freeze them. They're gonna freeze the ones that took. So we had about 6 by the end that took, and they froze them in the freezer. That's how I don't know. I mean, it's probably a little bit more than a freezer.
Yes, they froze them in the freezer.
And we were gonna wait till my body healed in order for me to actually transfer the embryos back into my body.
And that took about a month, right? It took about a month until you were deemed ready to go through the transfer.
Yeah.
And so we went through that first transfer, and it's a very unique process in the sense that, I think, from my perspective, there's a lot of waiting, right? So you have the transfer date, and then about 10 days after that transfer date is when you get any indication of it either being successful or unsuccessful. And during that time, it's kind of a waiting period. You just really don't know what's going on inside. You're hoping for the best, and still trying to keep yourself healthy and making sure you get a lot of rest so that this process can be successful. But unfortunately for us, the first time it wasn't successful.
Yeah, it was, we did this one, the first one, at the beginning of 2021. So, we thought, well, it's a 50% chance, like, and we know a lot of people that have gone through IVF and it was successful on the first try. And so I think for us, we were definitely optimistic, because we knew that it was possible, and that the embryos that we got after they graded them, we didn't, like, because you can also do a process where you, like, you poke the embryo and then you can like see like the DNA and like you can get the sex of the baby and all of that. But we didn't do that. So we just, the 6 embryos that we got was, we just, you know, we wanted to save all of them. We thought that we were going to be successful as well. And I think when we weren't, you know, it's like such a huge letdown, because one, you're spending all this money and time and something that you know you know like is not going to happen for sure, right? And so it's kind of like you're hoping that it doesn't happen. And so I think for us, we just I was pretty sad, I think, for that for a little while.
So after the failed first IVF, we had to go through some testing because they wanted to see what caused the failure. And so if your fertility doctors like ours, they will probably run you through similar tests just to make sure that they cover all their bases. And so what they suggested was Cari go through what's called an ERA test, or an Endometrial Receptivity Array test, which basically tries to determine whether or not the period of receptivity of the embryo into Cari's uterus lining is of the right timing, right? And so they do that by timing the procedure through basically faking an IVF process.
And that took a couple weeks. But overall, like from the first transfer to the second transfer, it did take months, just because I had to get my cycle back on track, and then we had to do the ERA test, and then you know, from there determine like what was going to be done differently the second time around. And so we were still very hopeful, because we knew that we still had 5 embryos left. So we still had, you know, a lot of chances of pregnancy and just starting our family. And so the second one, I think we did mid last year. And
well, before that, the result of the ERA test was that you were late receptive.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Right, which is important to know, which means that the timing of when we put in the embryo into her uterus needs to be later than what they normally would have calculated.
It's like a very specific timing or something within my uterus. And I mean, it's crazy to think that, you know, people can get pregnant so easily sometimes, and like all, you know, it's like there's so many things that can delay that, you know. And so anyway, just learning a lot through IVF. So we did our second one mid-July, and that time we decided to transfer actually 2 embryos in my uterus. And so you know, we were definitely, we understood that maybe we could have twins, right? Because when you transfer 2 embryos, then there's a possibility that they both could take, right? And we just knew that multiples was an option as well, but we also knew that no babies also could take. So we kind of understood, but at the same time, it's still very overwhelming when you go through, I think, IVF, because there's so many things that are happening at once.
And actually, with the multiple embryos that we put in, the first initial blood test result came back very positive. Cari had extremely high HCG levels, which is the hormone that they're looking for in your body to tell that you're pregnant. And so I believe the very first blood test, which they're not supposed to do, but they called early, and they were just really excited because they knew that we had a failed IVF before, and told Cari that her HCG levels were really, really high. And so at the time it was mentioned to us, but not confirmed via any test, that there's a possibility we have multiples in there. And so we got excited, a little overwhelmed too, because we were thinking, oh my goodness, what happens if there's more than one?
I didn't think my body would be able to handle
my bank account would not have been able to handle that either. And so we went through that second IVF process with that thought in mind in the very beginning. And it wasn't until maybe a couple of weeks after the blood test that things started to go a little bad.
Yeah, and I started to bleed, you know, and just not understanding like what was happening to my body, and just, you know, kind of concerned. But at the time too, like sometimes when you do IVF, they say like, oh, some bleeding is normal, or some spotting is normal.
Especially if you have multiples, I think.
Yeah, so I thought, okay, maybe this is okay. But then it started to get like a lot, and it didn't stop. And so I got a little concerned, and we called our doctor, and we went in, and it wasn't until a couple weeks later that we realized that my HCG levels again were going down instead of going up, meaning basically that we had a miscarriage. And that kind of sucked, because I think we both were hoping, that was going to be, or, our babies, and it wasn't. And yeah, I mean, just, it definitely, I think, like, when you, even if it's so early, just the thought of you having something and then losing it is painful, because you know that there was a possibility that the babies that were put in you were gonna thrive, I guess.
And everything happens for a reason, right?
Yes.
I mean, so
yes.
I really believe that this probably happened because Cari's body knew that it maybe would have been too difficult to carry 4 babies, or multiples if there weren't 4, right? And I'd rather have a healthy wife, right, than go through that and something bad were to have happened. So I looked at it as a very, not a positive thing, but if it had to happen, I'm glad it happened, and I'm glad the result was that you're healthy because of all of that, because that would have been difficult to have gone through it any other way. But we were nevertheless heavy-hearted. I mean, I think it was a very, very emotional and sad time for both of us. And we're both upset. We're both angry. We're both sad. We're both frustrated because at this point it had been over a year and a half of us going through the pregnancy journey, and everybody's journey is different, right? I mean, this is our story, it's unique to us, but for us it was a struggle to just make sure that we could get ourselves up for the next thing that we had to do. And luckily our doctors at Pacific IVF here in Honolulu, they're super supportive. They were emotionally with us. They were supportive of what had happened with Cari. I remember even getting a card from them at the end, just a really apologetic sympathy card. And when we did our follow-up appointment with them a month later, they encouraged us to keep trying, right? Because not only did we still have viable embryos at that point, but we knew that we really wanted to have a baby. And so that was something that was a no-brainer to us, is once we got over it, we're going to try again.
Yeah, I think at that time we didn't know too if we were going to take a break before we tried again, or
and we talked about it,
if we were going to just go on, to try again, like the next time that my body was able to. And so our doctor recommended that, because like the one good thing about when you do this and you have a miscarriage is the fact that in a sense I felt like, well, my body could get pregnant,
It's like jump starting your body to thinking
my
you
body
can get pregnant.
could get pregnant. And so there's a possibility that we are able to have a child, because it just showed me that maybe those weren't the right embryos, right? And maybe that wasn't the right timing, but it is possible. And I think that's how I had to look at the situation, going forward after the sadness and after all of that. I had to understand that, well, the good things that we know from what happened is that it is possible, and that, we're on the right track. Because every time we were doing it, right, then it was getting a little bit more in that direction of a positive pregnancy. And so we decided to try it again one more time, and now we only had 3 embryos left. So we were getting a little worried, because too, like, I didn't know if we were going to transfer 1 or 2 the next time, and all of that kind of stuff.
And if it didn't work, we would have to go through this whole egg retrieval again, and just thinking about the cost and the emotional damage and things like that. It was tough.
It was a lot. So our doctor actually recommended that we do a natural IVF cycle. And so what that was for this third one is basically where you don't really use that many drugs. And it kind of like how I understand it, because I like to understand things very simple, but it's like you put IUI and IVF together, and so like your body will naturally produce the hormones that it needs to ovulate and to like create the space necessary. And then when it's ready, like they'll try, they help you with minimal drugs, but it's not like a normal IVF cycle. And then when your body is ready, like the right timing for your natural ovulation cycle, then they transfer the embryo into your body. So it just, for the doctors, it takes a little bit more like TLC, because
the timing is critical.
The timing is like the most critical thing of when to put the embryo in. I
think for us, we were a little skeptical at first about a natural IVF, because we had a successful pregnancy technically right before that, using the conventional method, which I thought, if you're going to get a successful pregnancy, why stray away from that? Why not just do the same thing over again? But again, this is where I think your doctor knows you best, And her assumptions at that point, after meeting with us, were that, you know, Cari's body could get pregnant, and we know this, so let's try it this way, where maybe, like Cari was saying, we've almost kind of jump-started her her system to thinking, you know what, it's time for me to get pregnant. And this third cycle being natural was different. It was less invasive to Cari because she wasn't taking as many drugs as she said, but it was also another emotional roller coaster for us after we put it in, because, you know, here we are thinking, if this one doesn't work, we're most likely going to have to start this whole thing all over again.
Yeah, we would have one embryo left, but I don't know if we would do another round.
Yeah.
But emotionally, by the third transfer, you just feel like, I don't know if you don't feel negative, but you just
You're
I
indifferent.
Felt, yeah, you're very indifferent. Like, you don't want to get too high.
Because you know you can get disappointed.
Because you can get disappointed very, very easily. And I think, you know, even if the pregnancy test in the beginning comes up positive, we knew that it's going to still be a little while before we can even trust that this is going to be something real.
Right, look. Oh, see it right there. You can still see it there. So when we pull back, unfortunately, it's hard to continue to see it, but it's the bright. The bright white, yep.
And so we kind of outlined this whole journey on our podcast at the Hawaii Couple. So if you guys are already subscribing and listening, thank you so much. But go on there, episode 24, which is our most recent one. We share about this third process of natural IVF. We also share in episode 7 around our initial journey through this IVF process. So take a listen. We go into a lot more detail, a lot more emotion around what we're feeling in that. So please, if you're liking and subscribing already to the podcast, thank you so much. If not, check us out wherever you find your podcasts, and leave us a comment. Like us on Apple Podcasts, because that helps kick us up in the rankings, and you can hear about our IVF journey there.
Yes.
But let's get to the special announcement, which, if you've been watching this far, you probably already have inferred that
we're pregnant.
It worked.
So are we gonna guess or no?
Alright, so we already know because we looked at the paper, but we are gender revealing to our family.
I hope it's a boy.
Oh no, but before we say that, Cari, you're the tiebreaker, right? Because if you have a boy, then we'll have more boys. Is that what you figured out?
Yeah.
And if we have a girl, then we'll have more girls. So you're the tiebreaker.
Right on.
3 right now.
Then when we fight, we win.
And we're super excited because this is going to definitely be a new chapter in our lives, and we're going to get a chance to expand the family portion of Hawaii Food and Family on this channel by bringing in and creating our own loved ones and bringing in our own family into this. So thank you guys for supporting. We're excited. We're having a girl.
It's a carrot. It's a girl. It's a girl.
We are having a girl, and we are very excited. I still feel a little cautious. We are due in July, and so, you know, we have a little bit more ways to go, I think, in the pregnancy. But overall, you know, we are just, as Reid said, we're very grateful and just thankful for all of you that have been on this journey with us. And you know, we look forward to making just not necessarily like totally new content, but just as I'm changing and as our family's growing, you know, our content definitely will evolve with us as we grow as well. And so we look forward to continuing to be a part of all of your lives, and just yeah, you'll see what this journey is like for us, as what pregnancy is like. I've never been pregnant before.
Oh yeah, I'm sure
know.
we're gonna do pregnancy videos
And so,
of the yin yang.
well, I don't know about that, but I just, you know, for me, this is a new experience, and it's exciting, you know, to add one more cousin with all of my nieces and nephews that all of you have seen on this channel as well.
And one more grandchild for both sides.
Grandchild, and so everybody is very excited. But we are just looking forward to sharing our journey with all of you.
So a lot of life updates. We'll keep you guys updated on future content videos, and then we'll play Spot That Baby Bump, because
we should show the baby bump.
If you look, you can see it. It's definitely there. Okay, so there it is. She didn't just eat a big breakfast. That's our baby.
All right, so we'll see you guys in the next video.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
And we'll see you guys soon. Bye.